Hi everyone, so today we're making a bundt cake and it's for an under the sea themed dinner party. So the bundt cake is flavoured raspberry, blackberry and white chocolate because raspberries and blackberries are in season at the moment. So I went raspberry picking before I made this cake. So we have fresh blackberries in. I do have a raspberry bush, but I didn't have enough. So I have some frozen raspberries from the supermarket and then some white chocolate. And it's all gluten-free and dairy-free as usual, but you can make it to whatever your dietary needs are. So I'm using gluten-free flour and dairy-free butter, other things, but if you can eat normally, then feel free to just make it normally. So the first things I'm starting with is the flour. So for this cake, I'm using 338 grams of gluten-free self-raising flour by Dove's Farm, and then 338 grams of white caster sugar, or it might have been granulated sugar actually. This is a super easy cake base to make, and then I'm just adding in my extras. Then to that, I need to add in my baking powder and xanthan gum, which helps with the gluten-free baking. So this is my xanthan gum, again from Dove's Farm, and I use about a teaspoon of that. And then for baking powder, I use about 2 teaspoons, or 1.5 teaspoons for that. Okay, so then I'm going to mix that through because you want the xanthan gum and the baking powder to be worked into your flour. So I'll mix that all through with a spoon quickly. And then we can add the rest of our ingredients. So next I'm adding butter, and this is the Stork dairy-free butter. This is the hard one, the block form, but the fluffy one would probably be better for this for the cakes. I think it literally says on it the Stork fluffy for cakes or something like that. But just use whatever dairy-free butter you have on hand, really, it's not a big deal. So I add that in, and for the butter, again, it's 338 grams. So I ran out of the first block, so I had to get the next block out. I have tried some of the flora butters as well. They're fine inside the recipe. I just find when it comes to icing, that the Stork block butter is the best. It acts most like regular butter. But for inside the cake, it's really no big deal. And on this day, I'm not doing any Swiss meringue icing or anything, so I don't need to worry about the butter anyway. So next, I'm going to add some vanilla bean paste. If you just have vanilla extract or essence, that's fine too. But I had some vanilla bean paste, so I wanted to use that. And I just use about a teaspoon. I mean, really with vanilla, it's like the more the better. This just has like the little flecks, like the pods do, and the taste is a little bit stronger, so that's why I like to use the paste. Okay, and then next, eggs. So I add 6 eggs for this recipe. So it's quite a lot of eggs, but because it's gluten-free, you need a lot of that kind of binder, and the eggs act as that. So I just crack 6 eggs into my bowl. And then that's all the basic base ingredients for this cake. So then after that, it's just kind of the extras that we want to add in. These are medium eggs, I believe. They're either medium or large. If you have large, you could probably do 5, but I think these are medium, so I'm doing 6. Yep, so I'm done with the scales now, and I'm getting that into my mixer. And I'm using a stand mixer, but you could just use a hand mixer, or like the electronic hand ones too. So this is 1.5 my basic cupcake recipe that I usually use. So for the Bundt cake, I've 1.5 that recipe to have a full Bundt cake. And it turned out so delicious and moist, so I definitely recommend. It was a big favourite, this recipe. It was super yummy. So I'm just going to get that all mixing now. This recipe is so uncomplicated, and I think that's just what you need sometimes. I did want to originally on this day make a layered cake, but I just didn't have it in me, and a Bundt cake is so much simpler. It always looks quite fancy, and it's super delicious. So if you're having a day that's similar, where you still want a cake and you still want to have something nice, but you just don't have the energy to make like a big layered cake, then this is a great option. So once that's all combined, sped it up just so that it goes a bit quicker on the video. Then we can start adding in our like add-ins. So you could do whatever flavour you want, but like I say, I'm doing white chocolate, raspberry and blackberry. So I just have this basic dairy-free white chocolate. And I think I have 3 bars of that. I think they're like 50 each. So it's about 150 grams. And I'm just breaking that into little pieces. And the key step for the chocolate is to coat it in flour, which we will do in a second. Otherwise it will sink to the bottom of the pan, and you won't have chocolate pieces throughout it. It will just all be at the bottom. So anyway, I'm doing that. I'm also just going to add the raspberries to the bowl. So like I say, I'm using frozen raspberries on this day, and I'm using probably about a cup worth. I don't know. Just an amount. Just use as many as your heart contents for the raspberries. Depends how raspberry you want it. So I'm just going to add some flour to those, mix them through. So I'm just using like a teaspoon of self-raising flour or so to kind of mix through the white chocolate and the raspberries to stop them sinking to the bottom. I would have done the blackberries at the same time, but there wasn't enough space in the bowl, so that you can see they're all coated in the flour, so they won't sink. So I can get those into the bowl now. Okay, so now I'm doing the same for blackberries. And again, I'm doing like about a cup or so of blackberries, and I'm just mixing them in with the same flour that's left in the bowl. And these are the freshly picked blackberries, and they were so juicy and delicious. I have a special spot where I go that has so many blackberries in the summertime. So I love making blackberry desserts in the summertime, and I usually keep a box or so in the freezer because every year at Christmas I make a blackberry and apple or a blackberry and pear crumble from the freshly picked in the summer blackberries and apples or pears. It depends what I pick, but that's always super delicious. So I don't mix that through too much or it'll break into a million pieces, and I don't want the whole batter completely red with the juices and everything. So I just get my Bundt pan out. This is just a standard sized Bundt pan, and make sure you grease it. It actually took me a while to get my cake out, even though I had greased it. It came out in one piece. It was just a little bit stuck. So make sure you grease your pan because you don't want your Bundt stuck. So I'm just using my hand to rub this butter around, but I have clean hands, so all good. Okay, so now my pan's all greased. We can get our cake batter into it. So I just unlock that and we've got a nice cake batter, and we just need to get it into the pan. So I just use a spoon. Try to avoid putting it down the hole in the middle. So as I'm pouring it out, you can see that there's some bits that have the berries through, but most of it's not completely red basically, which I didn't want it to be. I want it to be kind of mottled, not completely one colour. But if you did want it completely red, I would just mix it for like a couple minutes and it would definitely go red from all the juices and the berries. So I'm just trying to carefully get all that goodness into the pan. I don't want to miss any because it's so yummy, and I just want it all in the pan. So I'm trying to get as much in as possible. And I also have my oven preheating at this point at 175 Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. I can't remember. Sorry. I tried to make my cakes on always about 175 because I read that that's like the best temperature for it not to have the super huge rise in the middle. So the best temperature to try and keep it quite even throughout. And this cake did take a while to bake, as you can imagine. I think overall it took, I don't know, about 45 minutes to an hour to bake. And if you're worried about it getting too brown, you could just bake it until it looks good on the top and then cover it with some tin foil. So now we've about got all our batter into the Bundt pan, as you can see. We're about empty there. So I'm just going to wipe down the sides to make sure that it doesn't get stuck to my pan and burn on. And then also kind of just mix, like kind of flatten it out with my spoon. Again, just getting off any stuff that's way too high up. And there it is, all ready to go into the oven for, like I say, 45 to an hour. So now I'm melting some chocolate for the decorations to go on the top. The store didn't have any more bars left, so I had some buttons as well. So some bars and some buttons to melt down. And for melting the white chocolate, I put it all into a safe bowl, cover it with cling film, and then I microwave it in 30-second increments. So you could do it on a double boil, the broil on the hob, but I didn't want to kind of spend time doing that. So on this day, I just 30-second it each time in the microwave until it gets to a good consistency. So once I've done that, like I say, I'm going to cling film it before I put it in there, just because I don't want it to explode and get chocolate all over the microwave. So here it is out the microwave. You can see that there's some pieces that are still a little bit harder, but it's so hot that it will all melt together now. So after that, I have my moulds I want to get it into. So I have some seahorse moulds, an octopus mould, I have some other moulds, all very under the sea themed. It's such a tongue twister, that one, under the sea theme. I got these off of Amazon, I believe, ages ago for a different cake, for cupcakes. So I'm just reusing those, and they're really great. But I did brush them inside with a little bit of oil first, and then I fill them, and then I put them into the freezer. You could put them in the fridge overnight, and then they'd be good. But I find the colder the better, because the heat of your hands, as soon as you take them out, they start to melt quite easily. I tried to push down the melted chocolate into the shapes, and you can also kind of shake them to get any air bubbles out. So they are a little bit finicky. Anyway, I'll speed through this. So these are my other chocolate moulds. Like I said, I've got like a mermaid tail, a starfish, some other bits, all again very under the sea themed. So once I've done that, I'm moving on to my drip icing for over the Bundt cake. So I'm doing like a blue, ocean blue kind of drip over the Bundt cake. So I've just got 1 tub of Philadelphia vegan cream cheese. It's gluten-free and vegan. And then I used my whisk to get out the tub, which probably wasn't the best idea because it got all stuck in it, but it's fine. And then I don't measure out the amount of icing sugar, but I would guess about 150 grams of icing sugar. And I just mix that through. I mix it through by hand, and it was a workout. But I didn't really feel like getting my stand mixer out for it, and I have a hand mixer, but I didn't want to get that mucky, so I just used my whisk. Anyway, once that's all mixed through, then you can pick whatever colour you want to dye it. So, like I say, I'm going for an ocean blue. So I have some blue, and I'm also adding a little bit of green. So I'm using the Dr. Oetker blue. I thought I had a new blue one from the new icing colour, or the food colour sets that I bought, but I didn't, which was unfortunate. But I'm using, I think it's Colour Splash, or is it Colour, I think it's Colour Splash, food colouring from the green. They're so much more potent, so much brighter. I have to use like the whole tube of this blue, and I literally just use a drop of green. Obviously it depends what colour you're going for too. As you, again, you can see it was an arm workout blending this blue through, because this icing colour, or food colour, I keep getting it wrong, this food colour, it like has a habit of kind of just going splotchy, so you have to really work it through, whereas the other ones don't do that so much, so something to consider. But they are more expensive and harder to get, so is what it is. At this point, my arms are so worn out, and I have to keep taking breaks because I can't do it anymore. So you can see it's still a little bit pale blue for me. So add, you can see just a drop of that green, and look how potent that is. So much more. And then I'm like, damn it, I need to add a ton more blue because it went a bit too green. But it worked out in the end. More blue. Anyway, so yeah, the moral of the story is the more expensive icing or food colouring is probably worth it in the end, because I have to use this whole tube. I only use a couple drops from the other one, so I definitely think that it works out cheaper in the end. Anyway, that's the consistency of my icing, which you could drip over the cake, and I have a go at it, but it's not quite runny enough, so I saw that in a minute. So right now I'm just cutting off the bottom of my Bundt cake because it's a little bit uneven. It doesn't sit completely flat. I have let it cool at this point, obviously. So I'm just cleaning off my plate so that I can use it to put the cake onto. If you have a cake board, that would probably be better. I do have a few cake plates, to be fair, I could have used, but I just used that. And you can see some of the raspberry pieces and blackberry pieces at the top of the cake. Anyway, so at this point you could drip on the icing as it is, but as you can see, it is quite runny. But I do have a go and it doesn't really work out. So you'll see that in a second. So here, yeah, it kind of runs, but it mostly stays solid. So to fix that, because that's not really going to work, I just popped the bowl, without the whisk in it obviously, in the microwave for, I think it was 10 seconds. I think it was literally just 10 seconds. And then it was easily runny enough for me to drip over the cake. You don't want to do it too long or it'll be way too runny and too thin. So here it is runnier. So now I can just easily drip it all over the cake. And then what I did is I cleared his face out in the fridge and I got the cake straight in there to cool for a minute, just so that the icing stayed put. But it looks so pretty when you run icing down a Bundt cake. So I just tried to fill up any gaps. So like I say, as soon as I'm done with that, I pop it straight into the fridge. And then I crush up some biscuits to make like the sand for the topping. So I just have some gluten-free, dairy-free digestives here. These ones are from Tesco. I just put a few in, you don't really need too many. And then I put them into a sealable bag, and then I can smash them up in them. Easiest thing to do would be to use a rolling pin. I try using my hands just to crush them and it doesn't really work out too well. So then I use a bottle of almond milk that I have right next to me, but preferably just use a rolling pin. But the almond milk did work, but you don't really want to bust a thing of milk. Anyway, I just crushed that down until it looks sand-like enough for me. You want it to be relatively small, really. But you do sometimes have like chunks of sand as well. So once I'm done, there you can see the texture, it's all quite thin. Then it's time to kind of drizzle that onto the top of our cake. So I just open up that bag and pour some of it on. I'm quite careful, like I'm putting it down the centre, but you could definitely just kind of fling it all over. So I'm just putting it the whole way around. And then once that's done, it's time to start adding our other kind of toppings or the decorations. So the chocolate decorations basically. So I get the moulds out of the freezer that I had in the freezer from before. And then I just take them out, pull off kind of the excess chocolate around the edges, and then add them to the cake. So you have to be quite careful with them because they break pretty easily. So just place them carefully around wherever I want them. I'll speed up through it, and then I'll show you the end result in a minute. So I do pull the ends of the tails off of the seahorses just so that I can stick them vertically into this cake. And then that's the finished product, so I'll spin it around so you can see it. And clear off the table a little bit. So here it is. Again, I need to spin it around. So we've got like our seahorses, our octopus, our mermaid tail. Here's a zoomed in version. Turtle, sorts. It looks adorable and it tasted so good. So yeah, those are seahorses. And the chocolate moulds are super easy to use, so I definitely recommend. And you could easily paint them with a little bit of food colouring and some water. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy.